I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israeli leaders condemn Syria's latest chemical weapons attack. The battle over the freedom of the press in Israel continues, and it looks like one Israeli political party is about to have it out for Britney Spears. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Israelis are in shock following a deadly chemical weapons attack in northern Syria, and now Prime Minister Netanyahu is speaking out against the violence.
When I saw the images of babies suffocating from a chemical attack in Syria, I was shocked and outraged. There's no excuse whatsoever for the deliberate attack on civilians and on children, especially with cruel and outlawed chemical weapons. I call on the international community to fulfill its obligation from 2013 to fully and finally remove these horrible weapons from Syria.
At least 72 people are estimated to be dead after the Syrian government struck an opposition-held town in the north of the country. 20 of the victims are children and another 17 are women. Videos from the scene show volunteer medics using fire hoses to wash chemicals from the victims' bodies alongside images of lifeless children piled in heaps. Hundreds are still suffering respiratory issues, including vomiting, fainting, and foaming at the mouth. The international community is blaming the Syrian government for the attack, which is reminiscent of the 2013 chemical assault, which left hundreds more dead in Syria.
Here we are more than 70 countries and organizations. The world is looking at us, the Syrians are looking at us, and are expecting us to give a strong push to the political talks in Geneva under the excellent leadership of the UN and the Special Envoy, because it's clear that the best investment for all the people of Syria and for a sustainable future in the region is commitment to peace, serious, consistent commitment to peace.
Nobody is winning this war. Everybody is losing. It puts a danger to us all. And the fight against terrorism is vital, but any successes will be ephemeral without a political solution to the crisis in Syria.
Objectively, I simply don't see how Bashar al-Assad can remain in charge after what he has already done. Of the 400,000 people who are estimated to have been killed in Syria, he is responsible for the vast majority of that butcher's bill. And you have to go a long way back in history to find a tyrant who has stayed in office in such circumstances.
Israelis just over the border are reeling, and President Rivlin is comparing the incident to atrocities from the Holocaust. Israeli government leaders are now making calls to take greater action to stop the horror, saying that the Jewish people have a moral obligation to open their gates to victims of genocide. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's conflict with the public media channel shows no signs of ending anytime soon. His compromise deal with the finance minister is still under heavy scrutiny. Israel's new public station, called Kan for short, was set to begin transmission on April 30th. But that may now be delayed after the Prime Minister pulled the plug on the news division, throwing 150 newly hired journalists out of work. Netanyahu says he's setting up a separate department to save the jobs of some of the employees at the old public channel. But the Kan personnel say he did it because he thought they'd be too left-wing.
It's a corrupt deal which is meant to stop criticism against the government, which, it's against every democratic principle which we stand for.
Kan's filed an appeal against Netanyahu's decision with the Supreme Court. When retired Supreme Court Justice Dalia Dorner now heads the Israeli Journalists Council. She's also calling the premier's restructuring a serious violation of freedom of the press. Netanyahu is vehemently denying those charges.
תקשורת במדינת ישראל היא חופשית. היא תישאר חופשית. יש בה, אם אתם פותחים את הערוצים או את העיתונים, יש בה בדרך כלל דברים שכותבים עליי, זה מצחיק אותך. בטח. זה מצחיק אותך, זה לא מצחיק אותי. אבל אלה החיים בדמוקרטיה. הייתי רוצה שיהיה עוד תחרות, עוד גיוון, עוד פלורליזם. הדבר האחרון שאנחנו רוצים זה את ההפך מזה.
Independent observers acknowledge that harsh criticism of the prime minister plays a role in the current situation.
The problem with the media and politics in Israel during the past couple of years is that the media has very severe fixation towards Prime Minister Netanyahu, while Netanyahu, on the other hand, is trying to control the media very dramatically during the past 18 months. It got to the point where Netanyahu wanted to pass a legislation that he would control both public and commercial media in Israel. This is obviously a major source for concern to anyone who thinks about freedom of the press or the Israeli democracy.
Police are still investigating conversations Netanyahu held with the publisher of Israel's best-selling Yediot Achronot daily in 2015. The talks allegedly centered on the premier's agreement to help limit the paper's competition in the news sector in exchange for more positive coverage. Netanyahu has denied any wrongdoing. If you thought you could get away with writing something not so nice about somebody in a private message on Facebook, think again. According to one Israeli judge, it might be time to start holding your tongue, or should we say, backing away from your keyboard. A businessman and political activist named Nissim Hadas has filed a lawsuit against a man for calling Hadas a thief in a private message to his own relative. The man says he didn't make the claim publicly and only wrote it privately to his cousin on Facebook Messenger. But Israeli Judge Merav Ben-Ari is ruling that the social media platform is the same thing as publishing a claim which meets Israeli standards of legal defamation. In other words, the lawsuit is viable. Hadas is demanding 70,000 shekels in damages, which is a little more than $19,000. But he's only being awarded about $2,500. It turns out the defendant still has to pay about the same amount for the costs of the court anyway, so the lesson in all of this is that your mother is right. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, and if you feel that you really have to say it, make sure it's only whispered very quietly into the ear of someone you really trust. As if the recent administration change in Washington was not enough to shake things up here between Israelis and Palestinians, there seems to have been a change within a change. Is this a policy shift away from Israel towards the Palestinians? Have Palestinian opinions toward President Trump changed? Gershon Baskin, an expert in Israeli-Palestinian relations, shares his insight.
There was obviously not euphoria amongst the Palestinians with the immediate election of Donald Trump, with fear that Trump would give the Israelis a carte blanche to build settlements and that the two-state solution might be off the table. The Palestinian current assessment is that that's not the case, that despite the selection of Trump's advisors of being people who have been on record as being very supportive of a no two-state solution or expanding Israeli settlements, supporting moving the American embassy to Jerusalem. The mood seems to have changed on the Palestinian side, and they're more optimistic that there might be a chance of a genuine peace process emerging under Trump once again, which is what the Palestinians want. They want to be in an endgame negotiation with Israel on a two-state solution based on the June 4th 67 borders with their capital in East Jerusalem. This is their stated position. It has been that way for 20 years. And they think they might get a better hearing from Trump, who has no real record or experience in negotiations or dealing with this issue. His emissary, who's been here, Jason Greenblatt, broke protocol and held meetings with civil society leaders. He held a meeting with a group of young people from a refugee camp north of Ramallah. He met businessmen from Gaza. He has just recently attended the Arab League summit in Amman. He's meeting with Abdel Fattah Sisi and King Abdullah, and will be meeting with President Abbas in 2 weeks. So the Palestinians are viewing this as a new chance, a new opportunity, a new open door.
And do you think that meeting with those people that are not the politicians is going to bring new ideas, or is that viewed in the Palestinian leadership as positive, or?
It's viewed very positive because every Palestinian more or less is going to tell the Trump administration the same things, that we want the Israeli occupation to end. We think that settlements are an obstacle. Our capital is in East Jerusalem. We support a two-state solution. This is what he's hearing from the majority of people that he's speaking from. And the Palestinian Authority people, Mahmoud Abbas and others working with him in the PLO, are very supportive of this position. So this is what the Trump administration is hearing. I think it's significant from the Palestinian point of view that despite an Israeli statement this past Friday on understandings with the Trump administration on settlement building, this is not what's coming out of the White House. And the White House statements and comments have been quite different, that there is no understanding yet, there is no agreement yet with Israel on anything with regard to the future of settlement. So the Palestinians are cautiously optimistic.
Now, is it possible that there could be another framework? I mean, when President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu were in the White House in a joint press conference, President Trump sounded more like Dr. Seuss, where he said, two-state, one-state, red state, blue state, you know, it doesn't matter as long as it comes.
Let's face it, if you are a Zionist, if you believe that Israel is the democratic nation state of the Jewish people, there is only one solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and that's two states with two people between the river and the sea. There is no one-state solution that allows Israel to continue to be the democratic nation state of the Jewish people. I'm Jewish, I'm an Israeli, I'm a Zionist. I want Israel to continue to be the democratic nation state of the Jewish people, and therefore the Zionist solution is the two-state solution. If you can tell me a Zionist solution which leaves Israel the democratic nation state of the Jewish people, that's not the two-state solution, I'd really like to hear it, because I've never heard it before.
Israeli Knesset member Ksenia Svetlova just got happily hitched this week, but the exciting news is making headlines for a much darker reason. Svetlova ended up tying the knot in the Indian island nation of Seychelles as part of a larger goal to protest the chief rabbinate's monopoly on marriage in Israel. ILTV's Aaron Porras joins me with more. Tell us about Israel and Israeli law regarding marriage.
Well, Israeli law mandates that all Jewish marriages must be conducted under the exclusive religious council that only recognizes Orthodox ceremonies. Let's check out my report and I'll tell you more.
Those who wish to marry outside the faith or marry someone who isn't Jewish according to their standards are forced to marry abroad. Zionist Union member Svetlova has long championed civil marriages in Israel, saying that, quote, no one has ownership of Judaism, and it is inconceivable that in a Jewish state, one obsessive body will have an absolute monopoly on our lives, end quote. A poll released last month showed that 72% of Jewish Israelis support civil marriages, and that 76% of Arab Israelis support marriage freedom, allowing people to marry outside their faith.
Now, it looks like Knesset member Svetlova wasn't the only one dealing with marriage challenges in Israel this week. For some, yesterday marked a true celebration of love when 10 couples of new immigrants sealed the deal in the Holy Land as part of just one ceremony. Aaron, tell us more about these couples.
It turns out the couples are actually Indian Jewish couples from the Bnei Menashe Lost Tribe, which is believed to be descended of one of the 10 lost tribes of Israel, exiled from Israel 2,700 years ago. And what's interesting is that it wasn't even the first time that they've been married. Let's turn to my report.
Let's check it out.
The group wedding ceremony is part of the couple's formal conversion to Judaism, even though in 2005, former Sephardic chief Shlomo Amar approved their claim of Jewish heritage. The couples are among about 102 new immigrants who immigrated from India in February. As of today, around 3,000 Bnei Menashe have immigrated to Israel, while currently an estimated 7,000 remain in India. Their immigration has been facilitated by the Shavei Israel organization, which aims to find lost Jewish communities around the world and bring them to Israel.
Tragically, tens of thousands of Jews died in Serbia during World War II under the Nazi occupation. Today, only about 3,000 still live in the country, and many of them are impoverished Holocaust survivors. The good news is that now there is a new plan to help them out. Belgrade has committed to start making annual payments of $1 million to the Federation of Jewish Communities in Serbia for a quarter century. 1/5 of the money will be given directly to Holocaust survivors for at least the first decade. The initiative was facilitated by the passing of a law last year which mandates that any unclaimed property in the republic that was seized from Jews during the war must be given to Holocaust survivors. The historic step comes more than 70 years after the Nazis declared Serbia free of Jews Jews, and it's being welcomed as a compassionate measure of justice for the survivors. Lots of nations are being urged to follow Belgrade's lead so other elderly victims can still receive benefits in their lifetimes. Letters are now being sent to 1,000 known Jewish Serbs who managed to survive the war and are living in 27 countries around the world. If you know of anyone who qualifies, please let them know as soon as possible because unfortunately the deadline to apply closes at the end of July. Oops, she did it again. Yes, our next story is actually about American pop star performer Britney Spears, who's making political waves in Israel for a very unlikely reason. Even though the pop princess gets kudos for defying the BDS campaign to take to the stage in Tel Aviv on July 3rd, she didn't exactly coordinate her calendar with the Israeli Labor Party. Turns out Spears just stole the spotlight from the political faction, which was planning to hold its primaries the same day in the same city. Officials say they thought that the likely traffic caused by concert goers would be too toxic and they'd get a stronger turnout if they pushed off their leadership contest till the following day. There was also apparently a shortage of available security. I guess the nation's guards thought they'd be crazy to pass up on protecting Britney to secure the boring balloting process. Instead, I think we can understand them. Isaac Herzog says he intends to hit it one more time and is running for the head of the Labor Party again against 7 other candidates. So even though there's no word on just how many of the party's members will be partying with Britney, they'll be able to vote the following day on July 4th between 11 a.m. to 9 at night. If no candidate passes the 40% threshold, a second round vote will be held on July 13th, unless, of course, another celebrity comes to town. All right, studies show that even though gender wage gaps in Israel have been narrowing in recent years, it's still among the widest in the developed world. One group has decided to raise awareness about the problem through a study of their own.
Women in the high-tech sector have created a community called XXUX Israel. About 1,500 women joined up in a common effort to advance their status in the industry. Advice and support is actively shared by the members through social media. They also just opened a spreadsheet for everyone to enter their own information about salaries, qualifications, and other relevant details. The idea is to empower women by learning more about what they can do to increase their paychecks. One of the problems they're finding out is that females are likely to name lower sums than their male counterparts during salary negotiations. That's reflected in the latest available data, which shows Israeli women take home less than 3/4 of what men do. Organizers of the Spreadsheet Initiative say they're hoping that greater insight into this and other issues can help to even the numbers between the sexes.
When you're traveling the world, or even if you just want to get to know your own city better, it's important to remember that age-old saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And what better method is there to become more Roman than sampling a little something from all of the best local eateries? Well, if that sounds good to you, listen up, because joining me now in the studio is the co-founder of the app Bite Mojo, Michael Weiss. He's going to tell us how we can get a little taste of the universe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you for hosting us.
Great. So tell us a little bit about what Bite Mojo does. I mean, I have yet to download the app, but I have a feeling I'm going to be doing that after I hear this. I know, I probably
right
will
after
be.
the show. So basically, Bite Mojo is the first app of its kind that allows you an experience that you cannot do otherwise, which is to learn about a place through his culinary DNA and through the focal point of food, but to do it at your own time and pace without being dependent on anything. So basically, we provide food tours and food discovery that you're the guide, you're the navigator, and you're standing in the center of your own experience. So you can eat what you want.
How does this work? Explain how this works. I
you
mean, you
download the app,
okay.
and then you choose a tour of your liking.
Okay.
We have tours in Berlin, but also in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv. So you download the tour, let's say East and West food tour in Jerusalem. Then you have an itinerary inside your mobile phone. You have a route, you have bites, you have points of interest, and you just follow one by one.
And it's an already made itinerary for you.
Yeah, we have chosen the best bites in every one of our tours, especially for you. Meaning these
how
bites.
Is it especially for you?
So these bites represent a certain story that we want to tell you through food. And so we're choosing the best vendors, the best sellers, the best restaurants in every of our tours. And we are developing with them a unique bite that is only part of our cooperation. So that could be a mid-size of their special dish, or something that creating freshly and authentic, especially for you.
Interesting. So it allows you to try multiple restaurants.
Yeah.
And, okay, now this is very, very cool. I'm a foodie myself, so I know I'm probably going to want to download this, especially for Tel Aviv. eat in a lot of different places, but I think that one of the most difficult things is kind of, figuring out where you are, where's the best place to go. How do, the people using this app know to trust the itineraries that you guys are choosing?
It's a great question, because when you travel to a destination, your time is precious. And you always start to sweat in the question, what should I do?
Well, and I think the worst thing is going through, TripAdvisor, sites like that, and you see all these ratings, but you really don't know what is authentic, right?
So what we have done with BiteMojo is taking information and making all the way to creating you an experience. So when you buy a tour with BiteMojo, you can leave your wallet at your hotel room, and everything has been settled for you already. So you have the bites that are already been picked by us for you. You have point of interest that are hidden gems that mostly local knows. And you take a fun, flexible experience. You can stop if you want. You can continue the other day. And even if you are left with, let's say, with 2 bites out of the 6, you can cash them out as credits and use them anywhere in the world when we have BiteMojo, BiteStop.
That's amazing. All right, so now where is BiteMojo operational? You said Berlin, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem. Are there other locations as well?
We are now developing more locations, which are Barcelona, Rome, London, and maybe more destinations in Europe. Okay. It started in Jerusalem. It's a very interesting story. It started in Jerusalem, in the soul and heart and soul of the Mahne Yehuda market, the famous Mahne Yehuda market.
Right.
And it started to go very fast towards the expectations of travelers who wanted to fill Jerusalem and taste Jerusalem as a local, without being dependent on a guide, on a route, on a group, on a flexible itinerary.
Listen, I think you guys have created something that the average traveler is going to fall in love with. I'm planning on downloading this app myself,
absolutely.
And I'll tell everybody who's watching that almost everybody in our office has already downloaded this app because they're like, this is the coolest thing we've ever heard of. So I'm excited to try it out myself.
I'm looking forward to that.
Oh yes, thank you so much for coming in.
Of course, pleasure.
All right, the Justice Ministry's Commission for Equal Rights for People with Disabilities is today suing the Israeli taxi service Get and 2 of its drivers for refusing to pick up a man with visual impairment and his guide dog. ILTV's Aaron Porras reports.
The case was filed in Tel Aviv and is demanding 125,000 shekels, or just over $35,000 in damages. According to the plaintiffs, when the daughter of Herzl Cohen, a visually impaired man, ordered a taxi for her father, the driver arrived only to notice that Cohen had a guide dog. The driver left, despite Cohen's protestations that the taxi driver was legally obligated to take the dog as well. After the first taxi left, Cohen ordered another one, but the second driver refused as well. Get, formerly known as Get Taxi, has stated that it's not responsible, as the application only serves as a mediator between drivers and passengers, and that the company is not responsible for any damage, inconvenience, loss, or distress caused directly or indirectly by drivers. The Justice Ministry Commission argues, however, that Get was negligent for not instructing drivers on how to behave, specifically with respect to the Equal Rights for Persons with Disabilities law. According to Avrami Toram, the Commissioner for Equal Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the law states very clearly that people with disabilities are entitled to participate equally in every sphere of life. He continued to say, quote, "Blind people assisted by seeing eye dogs frequently use taxis in order to get from place to place. One of the unpleasant experiences that unfortunately repeats itself is that even after the enactment of the Equal Status Law, taxi drivers refuse to pick them up into their taxi or pass by and don't stop. The enactment was intended to prevent instances of blatant discrimination against people with disabilities and the refusal to provide them with service." End quote. The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by the University of Haifa, Hebrew Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Speaking, eating, and breathing, some of ILTV's Aaron Porras' favorite things to do. But what else do they have in common? Well, they all have to do with today's Hebrew word, peh, meaning mouth. Now, apart from what I mentioned earlier, our piyot or mouths can do some amazing things like laugh, sing, or whistle. But your peh or mouth could also get you into trouble depending on who you mouth off to. So, while you may think you may be really good at conveying what you want to say, remember that true growth comes from dialogue. So, as the late, great American humorist Leo Roston would have said, we have 2 ears and 1 peh to listen more and talk less. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight is expected to be warm with a low of 58 or 14 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect mostly clear skies and a drop in temperature with a high of 83 degrees or 28 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.66 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching and see you next time.